all, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Dr. Priti Parekh. Hope you're all staying safe and well. In this video today, I'll be chatting with Dr. David Purves, who is a mental health expert, and we'll be talking about anxiety. What is anxiety? We'll be talking about how our brain can be hypervigilant when it's anxious, and how our brain can constantly be scanning for threats when it's anxious. We'll be talking about difference between anxiety, worry, stress, and most important of all, we'll be talking about self-CBT, which means how you can be your own therapist. Hope you enjoy. Dr. David Purves is a psychologist, CBT therapist, and creator of active self-help programs. He first created an active self-help CBT program over 20 years ago called Blue Bagon, and it provided a clinically effective treatment for depression and anxiety. That data was published, and he realized that given the right approach and right tools, many people can help themselves out of these severe clinical problems. He's a clinical psychologist practicing in Berkshire, and he got his psychology degree from University of Oxford. He's also created Anxiety Wizard for the NHS. For those who are not familiar with it, it stands for National Health Service, refers to the government-funded medical and healthcare services that everyone living in the UK can use without being asked to pay the full cost of the service. I'm very excited to have him aboard today. Hello, David. Hi. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me to join you in San Francisco. I'm in the UK at the moment.
That's right. It's evening for you and almost noontime for me.
Yeah, it's a different way of doing things, isn't it? Being able to just chit chat.
Yes.
How many thousand miles away?
World's getting smaller.
Yeah.
So, David, thank you so much for joining me in this in the discussion of this very important topic today, which is stress, anxiety. Most of us have gone through worry, stress, anxiety at some point in our lives, and it's very draining. Worry doesn't empty tomorrow of its sorrows; it empties today of its strengths. Although we use it interchangeably, David, I think there's a subtle difference between the three, right? Worry, stress, anxiety. Can you tell us what the difference is?
Well, the way I think about it is, and I do, the terms are somewhat used interchangeably, but anxiety is very often a physiological and emotional experience, but really you experience it physiologically, and that generates some emotion that you kind of recognize. So when people talk about tight chest, heart racing, visual disturbances, numbness, tingling, that's really straightforward anxiety.
Right.
Worry is the thinking part of anxiety. If your body is being anxious, your brain has to make sense of it. It has to interpret it in some way. And typically, a worry is, in a sense, you're asking your brain to solve a problem that it cannot solve. Now, your brain is very good at solving problems. It solves problems all the time. What to wear today is a problem. It does that without even a moment's kind of hesitation. But if you ask your brain to solve a problem and there is not a solution, it does not know that. It will continue to try to find an answer. And the reason that it cannot find an answer, or why there is no solution to worry, is that worry is always future oriented, right? When will I die? I'm really worried about dying. When will I die? I'm really worried. Well, when will you find out? In the future, right? So you cannot answer that question now, but you do not realize that. So many people think that worry is actually quite useful. No, you cannot solve a worry in the present, because the answer is in the future. That's what makes it a completely pointless activity. And stress typically comes, it's a little bit more present oriented, and it often comes from a feeling of not being able, or not having the resources to do what you need to do. So it's at the point where you feel like, you'll fail. There's too much to do and you haven't got enough time, or there's too much to do and you're going to be criticized because you can't do it well enough. So I think stress is a little bit more present oriented, and often we think of stress in terms of relationships, workplace, COVID,
Yeah.
That is a stressor, but really it's more of an anxiety for regular folks, and for healthcare workers, it's a stressor.
Right. Yeah. Well, you explained it so well. You know, the other day I read this on somebody's T-shirt. If stress burnt calories, I'd be a supermodel.
Stress does burn calories because it takes a lot of energy to be stressed. It takes a load of energy, to be anxious. Still, your body's working pretty hard.
That's true. And you know, interestingly, when I ask patients if they are stressed or what their stress level is, more often than not, I get the answer, oh, the usual, the same amount that everybody has. Or, of course, who's not stressed these days? We've normalized stress, right? We've accepted
Yeah.
that as part and parcel of our lives. Do you think that can be made optional?
I do believe that stress can be made optional. And uh, the thing is, you have to know how to make it optional. And the same is true with anxiety. I was talking to someone um, earlier today, and I said, well, like, how anxious are you? 0, not at all. 10's as bad as it could be. I'm an 8. Okay.
Uh,
Look around. Is there any reason for you to be stressed? No. Okay. All right. So what are you doing to bring the stress down? Well, nothing really. Okay. Let me show you this. So I show them a little tool, and the stress comes down to 0. Okay.
uh,
Now, if you know the tool, you can bring your stress down pretty much anytime you want. And there are lots of tools to use, right? But if you
yeah.
don't know the tool, you can't make stress or anxiety optional.
Uh,
You have to know the tools, and to make the tools sensible, you kind of have to think about mental health problems as just problems to solve.
uh,
Then they're in a way they're nothing more than just problems to solve. Certainly they're intangible because psychology is intangible,
uh.
and certainly they're hidden from you because they're behind your eyes, not in front of your eyes. But still, if we treat them as problems, we can apply solutions, and we always get an outcome.
Hmm. Hmm. I've heard you talk about the five doors to anxiety. Can you talk a little bit on that?
Well, in life we are journeying, right? And if you want to be anxious, you've got to put some effort into going on the journey to become anxious, and
Uh,
you typically have to pass through doors. I mean, I call them the 5 doors, but really these are processes, right?
uh,
So if you want to be really anxious, you've got to pay a lot of attention to physical symptoms that other people would ignore,
uh,
right? My heart's beating a little bit faster. Oh, I wonder what that means. And then you kind of you develop that symptom by focusing attention on it. So typically, what you focus your attention on magnifies, and you know that, right? If you're
right.
sitting somewhere and you want to have a scratch and you can't scratch because people are looking, right? It's absolutely the
Energy
worst thing.
flows where attention goes.
Yeah, absolutely. But then you have to worry about it. So the second door is worry, right? You cannot really develop a decent level of anxiety without putting some effort into worrying about stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and as we've said, worry is a pointless activity, but people don't know that. The other one is I never came across any mental health problem without someone also having a feeling of a loss of emotional control.
Uh,
A lot of times, and this is particularly relevant with COVID, a lot of times emotional control is lost because we feel that we are intolerant
uh,
of some uncertainty. Okay, so you never know what's going to happen next to a large degree. But if you're intolerant of that, if you have to have certainty, then you're giving your what I call power and control to all sorts of random things that are kind of irrelevant. I don't want to get like too down the rabbit hole, but giving away your power and control and being intolerant of uncertainty always make you anxious. And
uh,
it's almost by definition. I mean, intolerance of uncertainty is like a definition of generalized anxiety disorder. It's just
yeah.
so ubiquitous, right? Um, you've got to do negative thinking. It's all going to go horribly wrong. I'm going to get killed. I'm going to get found out. I'm going to get exposed. People are going to look at me. You've got to do the negative thinking stuff. So it's the thinking part. And then, of course, the tried and tested tool that everyone uses to some extent throughout their life, you've got to avoid doing anything useful about it. You've got to avoid thinking about it. You've got to avoid people, places, things. You've got to avoid tackling the problem. You've got to avoid even acknowledging a problem, right? So those are the 5 doors. You go through some of those doors. Everybody who is anxious has been through at least one of those doors and probably more. Now, the thing is, if you go through a door, you could turn around and come back the other way, right? Just because you've gone through those doors doesn't mean that you have to perpetually suffer these problems. But if you allow these processes to continue, well, then you will continue to be anxious because these processes give you anxiety.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And we know that anxiety can be helped. Well, there are various approaches. There are drugs, there is CBT, there are lifestyle changes that one can make. Now, going back to CBT, I've heard you talk about self CBT, that you can be your own therapist. So,
Yeah.
what do you think is the difference between the conventional CBT and self-help CBT?
Well, the first conventional difference is with CBT, you need a CBT therapist, or you need a therapist who can do CBT, right? You need to
Right.
have a person. But let's make it a little bit more broad. What does a therapist do? Okay, well, lots of therapists, hundreds and hundreds of therapies. But if you take CBT, what does a CBT therapist do? A CBT therapist teaches the client the tools of CBT.
Right.
Right. So if someone was let's say anxious, my definition of anxiety, or an element of my definition of anxiety is this, right? Anxiety is an overestimation of threat. Now, that is true, and that is verifiable. You can verify that because look, your physiological system was developed, I don't know, a million years ago.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to suggest that a million years ago, hominids, like human-like people, did not really have self-awareness. They did not have a self-awareness at all. So the detection of threat was incredibly important, and it was very useful. So historically, if you feel a threat, then you would respond to it because a threat is like serious, right? And all of our ancestors were very good at detecting and avoiding threat because we're direct descendants of our ancestors, right? But if someone says, I feel anxious now, right? I say, well, where's the threat? Well, in the way that I work, in my scheme, there are 2 realities. The first one, I'll give you a clue, Priti. The first one is external reality. What do you think the other one is? Internal reality. Right, okay. So you don't have an external threat, but your body's giving you the response of having an external threat, but you don't have one. Therefore, by definition, your brain is overestimating the threat you're under. Okay? Now, once we accept that, we then can do something to recalibrate your brain so that you're not anxious, right? We challenge it, we change it. Now, a CBT therapist, such as myself, will teach you tools to do that. But suppose I took all the tools that I know and I put them in videos on a structured course, and suppose you just watch the video, go through the course, and learn the tools. Now, you're your own therapist, right? You don't need a therapist because you can apply the tools. And that's self-help CBT. I teach you the tools by going through, let's say, my anxiety wizard course. You apply the tools, you're not anxious anymore. It really is. It cost you, right? It lost satisfaction, lost relationships, lost ambition, lost calmness and relaxation, right? We just suck these things up, but they're absolutely unnecessary. But you can't get fit without doing a bit of exercise. You can't use self-help CBT without doing a bit of effort. But I was talking to someone today. I said, however long you spend exercising, cut that into 4 and just take 1/4 of that and apply that to self-help CBT and you'll be good to go. 10 minutes a day or less, that's all you need to apply, in my opinion.
Yeah. And good thing is, David, you have your own therapist 24/7. If you are your own therapist, you have access to that person 24/7, and who knows you better than yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And my programs are so large, like I have 156 videos in it, that and so you're always doing something different. You never do the same thing twice. So it's always capturing curiosity and attention. There's novelty, right? So
Yeah.
you're always going through, oh, that's different. Oh, that's a different way. And if you think about a problem like, let's say, anxiety, if this is anxiety, well, if this is anxiety, there are lots of different elements, So they've got the 5 doors, right?
Yeah.
We have to deal with worry. We have to have tools for worry. We have to have tools to the overattention and physical symptoms. We have to have tools to give you your emotional control back and to moderate your intolerance of certainty. And we've got to have tools for negative thinking. So we cover all this stuff just a bit at a time. 10 minutes a day or less. That's all it requires.
Right. And you also talk about, power of practice, to change one day at a time. Can you give some specific examples how patients in your practice, they've overcome anxiety with the help of self-CBT?
Yeah. So there are, now, I used to throw this number out, and I'm not completely sure that it's correct. There are 186 hours in the week. Is that right? Because I say to people, there are 186 hours in the week. You're in therapy for 1 hour. What you're going to do for the other 185, right?
Right.
There are 168 hours in the week. So you're in therapy for 1 hour. You've got the other 167. What are you going to do?
Right.
Okay. So
if you can give examples of, like 2 or 3 things that somebody can do, for example.
I'm going to give you one example that is brilliant and it always works. Okay. If you can accept that anxiety is an overestimation of threat, right? So the first thing is we accept that that is the case. I mean, if you feel that you need to be anxious for any particular reason, tell me. Because there is no actual external reality. All of the reasons you need to be anxious are internal reality. They're actually fantasies. They're imaginations. They're what ifs. They're catastrophizations, right? They're not actually real. Okay.
Yeah.
But they feel real. So now we might say, okay, in external reality, you are safe. Yeah. Okay. But you don't feel safe, do you?
No.
No.
When somebody's
so now we have a disparity, right? This is true. This is how you feel. So what's our problem? Your feelings are not in line with external reality. Now, people value feelings and they put a lot of emphasis on feelings. This is how I feel. Yeah, okay. But external reality is also incredibly important. A brick is hard, a tabletop is hard, and if you're feeling anxious, but there's no reason to be anxious, we definitely need to recalibrate your emotions to be more in line with reality. Anyway, this is how we do it. This is true. You are safer than you feel you are. You agree?
Yes.
It's a true statement. I am safer than I feel I am. Okay. Now, I say to people, okay, I want you to say that, and I get people to say it 10 times in a set, 20 sets a day, spread out throughout the day. They move the mouth, they hear it, they think it. Do 10 repetitions in a set, 20 sets a day. Now, I say to people, how safe do you feel? And they go, so I say, no, I beg your pardon. I say I feel safe. They go, I feel safe. How true does that feel? 0, it's not at all true. 7 is completely true. 0, I do not feel safe. Okay. They practice this 200 repetitions a day. It takes 6 minutes to do 200 repetitions. But it's spread out throughout the day. Within 7 days, their feeling of safety has increased typically by 50%.
Wow.
So if they go 0, they'll go 4, 5, right? And that has changed their emotion, their feeling of not being safe, simply through practicing something which is true. Because actually what people do is they practice the stuff that's not true. They practice worrying, and they practice catastrophizing, and they practice avoiding, and they practice all sorts of stuff that's not useful. Now, here's my general motto, right? Problems exist and persist in the absence of an alternative. So if you're anxious and you don't have an alternative, you have to remain anxious.
Mm.
So now if we practice I am safer than I feel I am, we now have an alternative that is actually true. And we have a problem that we've defined, and we have a journey that we're going on, and we're agreed that actually how things are is not correct.
Mm.
And it always works. It always works because you're simply practicing what's true. And in doing so, you're recalibrating your brain, your amygdala, your limbic system to external reality. And in external reality, you're safe. So there you go. Well, a positive thinking might be, I want to be a millionaire, and I'll think like a millionaire, and I'll imagine myself a millionaire, right? But I'm not a millionaire. And an affirmation is like, the classic, right? Every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. Well, I don't know that I am, right? I'm just hoping to get better and better.
Mm.
I established what was true, and I
Okay.
established that we do not believe what is true. Now, there's an inherent problem in not believing what is true, because if you believe what is not true, that's in charge, and that's what's creating the anxiety, right? So we establish what's true, and we practice what is true. I never ever get anybody to practice anything that is not demonstrably true,
Mm.
because then if you leave leeway, your brain's creative, it can go, yeah, but you're not that good. Yeah, I'm fantastic. Yeah, you're not really.
Mm.
That's the sort of an affirmation, positive thinking. So I just, to be honest, there's quite enough mileage in practicing what's true, because all mental health problems are heavily based in imagining stuff that's not true.
Mm.
So if I can get you to believe what's true, we're good to go.
That's true. I mean, if you're saying an affirmation that you don't believe in, on a conscious level, you may be saying it, but your subconscious mind is still not ready to
No.
believe that to be true.
No. Well, that's the whole thing about the scientific approach, right? We want to be as effective and as efficient as possible, and we want to achieve results in the shortest time possible.
Right.
If I can demonstrate to someone that they are underestimating themselves
Mm-hmm.
or overestimating the threat, then we recalibrate to that, and that's always going to give an outcome.
Mm. Right. Great. And I'm sure there are many such tools one can use for anxiety.
Yeah, there's loads. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Fantastic.
often when I'm just talking to clients, we just make them up. We go, okay, if you can define the problem, you can create a tool.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you so much, David. These are great tools, great tips. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for your time. These mountains, I tell patients, patients with anxiety, that these mountains that you're carrying, you were only supposed to climb.
Oh, nice one. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I'll steal that and use it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on your show. I've enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Well, you take care.